welcome to another edition of Crime Time with DutyRon. I am a retired New York City police detective with 20 plus years of law enforcement. And standing right here next to me, or sitting right here next to me, is Jennifer Coffidaffer. She is a retired FBI special agent, and she is co-hosting with me tonight on the Oakley Carlson case. But before we get into it, Jen, we have to make a little bit of an announcement. Naomi Irion has been found deceased. The message has gone out over Twitter, I believe along with the sheriff's department. Her body has been recovered. We don't know any of the details or any of the facts, but my prayers and my thoughts go out to her family, her brother, sister, mom, and dad, and her stepbrothers. A really sad, tragic ending to a case that we saw some, a whole bunch of different things go on. And today we had that hearing where he was arraigned and offered bail. I'm sure that that's going to change now. But, again, a very difficult situation for all of us. It's tugging at our heart. But tonight we do have a show to talk about, and it's Oakley Carlson. This 5-year-old who has been failed by DCYF and quite a few of the systems that are in place to protect our children. Jen, how are you? Thank you for putting me on to this case. I just wanted to welcome you to Crime Time with DutyRon.
Thank you, Ron. Happy to be here, and my deepest condolences as well to the Irion family. Just tragic news tonight, and but certainly in our thoughts.
Hey, I want to say something too, Jen. As a law enforcement professional and a fellow brother and a sister here, I want to commend you on your coverage, along with your, as you called him today, your partner, Brian Enton. You guys do such a great job with coverage, and your input in all of these cases are just a tremendous help for not just myself, but for the listening audience and everybody who tunes in to all of your correspondence and coverage that you do to supplement and help these great news agencies get this information out. So you are so engaging with your audience on Twitter and all of the folks, and I know that there's many of your fans here. So I wanted to just tip my cap to you, my sister, and thank you for everything that you do.
Thank you, brother. It means a lot coming from you, Ron.
Yeah. So, when you reached out to me on this Oakley Carlson case, I mean, it was just, for me, a no-brainer, even though I'm juggling about 6 or 7 different cases right now. It's so Harmony Montgomery-esque, when I hear the details, the inner workings behind the failures with the agencies that are there to protect our little ones. Our children are our future. And when you have foster parents who are caring and loving, and there's this push for reunification, it's just mind-blowing that there's no checks and balances put in place. It just, to me, it just doesn't make sense. I want to play a quick piece. It's about 10 minutes long. I just want the audience to get a good understanding of this case. And again, our great friends at News Nation did a great job in covering this just about a month ago. So I'm going to play this for the folks, and then we're going to come back and we're going to introduce Jamie Jo Hiles. She is Oakley's mom. I don't even call her foster mom. She gave her a loving, caring home from 7 months to almost 3 years of age. And these are what you call wonderful, beautiful parents, and loving, caring. I could just go on and on about the goodness that these people emulate. So let's just play this clip for our folks outside the country and inside that are not really up to date on it, and we'll just give you a little bit of an overview. So here we go.
Gray skies and prolific rainfall. The northwest part of Washington state can seem a dreary place at times, which is what made Oakley Carlson's beaming smile stand out even more.
She was funny. She loved when we would laugh, so she was always just acting silly or doing things to make us laugh. And
Jamie Jo Hiles was Oakley's foster mother. She and her husband Eric had Oakley with them from the age of 7 months until just before her 3rd birthday.
Oakley, what are you eating? Pie.
Dance recitals, beaches, trick-or-treating, a normal, happy home.
it was just such a good bond. I felt like we were just such a good family. Like we felt like a nuclear family.
Then that bond was horribly broken when the state ordered that Oakley be reunified with her birth parents in 2019. But now, over 2 years later, Oakley is missing, not seen since February of last year. Her biological parents are behind bars in a Montesano, Washington jail.
Abandonment of a dependent child, reckless endangerment with drugs.
The reckless endangerment charge is over withholding necessary medication meant for one of their other children. Sheriff's Deputy Kevin Schrader is part of a team of investigators looking for Oakley and looking into what may have happened to her.
We were first aware of it in December 2021 when a family friend contacted us and they were concerned they'd been to the location several times and had not seen Oakley, but have seen the other siblings that were there. So.
This was after a November 2021 house fire at the home where Oakley lived with her biological parents, Jordan Bowers and Andrew Carlson, and her 3 siblings in Oakville, Washington. It was then that Oakville school principal Jessica Swift noticed something was amiss.
Jordan had let us know that there was a fire. And so I'd gone out to check on them and offer support and drop off supplies from the school right after their fire. And I saw all the other kids running around and playing, and I didn't see Oakley. And I thought it was a little odd, and I asked where she was, and they told me that she was in her room in timeout.
Then a few weeks later, another visit and no sign of the little girl. It was only when one of Oakley's siblings, a friend of Swift's daughter, was at the Swift's house.
On a play date with my daughter, with Oakley's sister, I asked questions about Oakley. It came out over the course of those questions that Oakley wasn't living with them anymore. I can't describe the feeling I had in that moment, sitting on that couch next to that little girl when she said that.
That December interaction was when Jessica knew it was time to escalate things.
Immediately contacted Grays Harbor Sheriff and got the ball rolling that way.
Processed the house, interviewed the children that were there at the house, and it had been some time since the AV had been seeing Oakley. Now they're young children and they can't, answer you directly, but it led us to believe that Oakley wasn't even there at the time of the fire, and it had been months prior to that any of the children had even seen her.
This smells of obstruction of justice, doesn't it?
Yes.
Investigators saw other obvious signs that Oakley had not been at the house.
We did not notice any bedroom set up for Oakley downstairs where everybody else had bedrooms set up.
On top of that, Schrader said they saw no clothing belonging to Oakley. The family had moved to a hotel in nearby Tumwater, but were back and forth to the house, raising another red flag.
Their vehicle that they had left the Tumwater Hotel with and then traveled back down to Oakville had one car seat in it. And there was a 2-year-old sibling as well as a 6-year-old sibling of Oakley that would have been in the car at that time.
To foster mom Jamie Jo Hiles, the revelation that Oakley was missing was a compounding heartbreak, forcing her to relive the day the smiling girl was taken from the safety of her foster home, the last day she ever saw her.
We just chilled out on the couch, and then the driver picked her up at 10 o'clock. And I don't know if I've ever cried so hard in my life. She's happy because she gets to see her sister, but she's also kind of confused because why am I crying? Why is Dad crying?
And for Hiles, those tears have now turned to something else.
I am so angry. And I know that
She's angry, she says, because it did not have to be this way.
Now I'm very angry at our social worker and at the state of Washington. Why have I reached out to people in government and haven't heard back yet?
But mostly she thinks about how it could have been different, how the horrors alleged in police reports didn't have to happen.
I think about the abuse that happened, like hearing from the police reports about Oakley being starved.
What is it, Mama?
Or that she was beaten with a belt. Or that she was locked in a cabinet.
What is it? Can you tell me? It's cheese and what?
Cookie.
That's the stuff I think about before I go to sleep.
I think we'll come to a closure on this case.
If Oakley would have stayed in my care, that would have never have happened to her, ever.
I'm hopeful that Oakley is found and she's found alive, but there are, pieces inside of me that think that might not be reality, just given the investigation.
What sustains the Hiles is that whatever may have happened to Oakley for half of her still short life, they showed her what love was.
I hope that when she was scared, when she was locked in a cabinet, or when she was afraid about something, I hope that she remembered that she had us.
A very sad situation, Jen. I know that this tugs at everyone's heartstrings. This is a little girl who had a loving home and was ripped away from her foster parents, who probably would have been great adoptive parents. I want to get right into it because I didn't play the whole thing because we have Jamie Jo Hiles here with us. She is Oakley's mom, and I want to introduce her. It's my honor and my pleasure to have her here with us today. Hi, Jamie. How are you?
Good. Thank you so much again for having me on, Ron. I really appreciate it. And hi, Jennifer. Thank you for making this happen too.
Hi, Jamie Jo.
Yeah, it's an honor, but our hearts go out to you and the community, your family. I know this is a tough thing to talk about, but you are fighting for your daughter and for what's right. And to speak about the injustice that was bestowed onto her by the people who are supposed to help protect her. Jamie, I know it's tough to talk about, but if you could, I'll go full screen with you. And if you could just walk us through basically how this all unfolded, give the audience just a little bit. This is Oakley Carlson's mom. She was fostering with her husband, but this is Oakley's mom, everybody.
Thank you. So Oakley came to us when she was about 7 months old, almost 8 months old. And it was a wonderful 2.5 years. A lot of that time we were under the impression that we would be adopting Oakley. We knew that there was a chance that the parents could become clean again and possibly get their children back. But a lot of that time we were led to believe that we would be adopting Oakley if the parental rights were ever to be terminated, which they were not, but we were still under the impression that might happen. So probably about 4 months before Oakley's return to her biological parents, we kind of sensed that things were changing. And so a month before Oakley's permanent return, we were told by DCYF that she would be going back and that it was going to be a very fast transition, which was very alarming to me. Very, very alarming because she hadn't spent the night there yet. She had never had an unsupervised visit at that time. So it was really fast, and I was really worried about Oakley having like an attachment disorder or just being afraid. Like, she's only known my husband and I for so long that that seems really terrifying to a 2-year-old, almost 3-year-old.
Yeah.
And I want to say in mid-October, Oakley came back from a visit and said that there was violence at the visit. And that was really alarming to both my husband and I. So we let our social worker know about it and didn't really go much farther than that, unfortunately. It was kind of I'll talk to them, not too worried about it. And that was it. And then November 29th of 2019, she went back permanently. And that was the last time I've seen Oakley.
It just doesn't make any sense to take a young child like that and quickly and just in a rush. It seemed like they were just in such a rush to reunify her with her biological family. Like my question is, and I looked into it, right away. I questioned off the bat. Jen and I are retired law enforcement professionals. We were like, did they do all the steps? Did they go through all of the steps of getting themselves clean? They were admitted heroin users and things of that nature. And I guess the DCYF felt that they completed their programs and felt it was okay to put them back. But what was fascinating about this whole thing, and I want everybody to know, Oakley Carlson is still missing. We don't know where she is. And that's the heartbreaking part about this. And we don't hear anything. We don't hear updates. I don't hear the news speaking about it on a regular basis. Now, granted, we have a lot of cases that are out there. There's a lot of children. This is very Harmony Montgomery-esque. The same type of failures that happen on the East Coast are happening on the West Coast and everywhere in between. Jen, we see so much of this stuff. I just say, you know, there has to be change. And I shout this from the rooftops that the system is broken. There's people that argue that the system's corrupt. There's people who will argue that the system is everything, all of the check marks. Tear it down and start from the beginning. But I spoke on a conference call with all the three of us together. And one of my ideas was to put body cameras on these social workers and the people who go out to these homes, because the film doesn't lie of what you see. And if they bring that into a judge and let a judge look at what they're seeing, maybe things won't be closed and changed, and a lot of things will change, I feel, just from that one move. But that costs money, and that's the problem. You know, nobody wants to spend the money. You know, I look at the work that the Grays Harbor Sheriff's Department continue to do behind the scenes. I think they said they have 6 dedicated detectives on this case. How do you feel about the police and what they're doing for you, Jamie Jo?
You know, I am really grateful to have such a strong force of detectives working to find Oakley. I feel like when I inquire with somebody, they're pretty apt about getting back with me quickly, and they're going to answer my questions to the best of their ability. I know that they can't tell me everything, especially because I'm not of relation to Oakley. But when I work with the detective that I have spoken with since December 6th, he is really kind to me, and he tells me, you know, I try to be as transparent and clear with you as I possibly can.
Yeah. Jen, any thoughts that you have on this case? I know you've been covering it and looking at it quite extensively.
Yeah, you know, this is the quite essential complete tragedy and breakdown of the social service program that is supposed to protect our children. You said it clearly at the beginning, Ron, and I echo that. I love the idea of the body cams for when they enter these establishments, or I should say their homes. But what's also bothersome is the caseloads these social workers carry, the lack of funds that are put into these programs. It's astonishing the kind of pay these social workers are getting. And I think that leads to people not seeking these jobs and not doing a good job at these jobs. And it should be one of the most important jobs anyone can have, to take care of our children. And it's really upsetting to see the Harmony Montgomerys and the Oakley Carlsons that, of course, we're featuring tonight, just totally abandoned.
Yeah.
And Jamie Jo, my heart goes out to you. It really goes out to you. I think about little 3-year-old Oakley, forget about what she ended up going to, that environment, just having to leave the love and care of her mother and father, meaning you two, is just, I can't imagine what that little 3-year-old must have felt, the pain. So, and of course your pain as well. So my heart goes out to you. And, you know, what I hope this will do is bring even more awareness as to changes that must be made because our children are being held in the balance.
Absolutely. Yeah. I feel like my biggest frustration is that it wasn't just Oakley was returned quickly, but the other times that I tried to say something is wrong, something's not right here, and I just feel like it was completely ignored. Because even when she wasn't in my care and I brought up, you know, I called it or I emailed DCYF and CPS, and it just didn't seem to be as of importance. And I don't know if it was because I was the foster mom. I'm not quite sure why my concerns weren't listened to.
Right. And I think a common denominator here is caseloads are high. They're overwhelmed with a lot of phone calls because, you know, tons of people see something and say something. You need somebody on the other end of that phone that's going to actually act, because we're not just talking about some adult that's assaulting each other, and that's not a right thing either. Right. But when you have someone calling child welfare, DCYF, whatever it's called in your city or your state, over here, it's Bureau of Child Welfare. But if you make that phone call, there needs to be a follow-up. just like the detectives talk about in these missing person cases and these murder cases and FBI. If you call them, they have to follow up on all of the leads. And that's what bogs them down. But there's so many law enforcement professionals that their heart bleeds and breaks for people like yourself, Jamie Jo, because we're parents too. I love and care for my kids, and I love and care for a lot of other people's kids over the course of my time. But, when we went out to people's homes, there was, we saw things that were just despicable. And I spoke about this on some of my live streams, and I've notified child welfare, and they were like, oh, there's food in the refrigerator. They're okay. And that's just not acceptable, and we see the fallout from that type of blowing off. You can't just blow off phone calls when someone says, hey, I think there's something wrong here. And in Harmony's case too, and I hate to keep bringing it back, but it's fresh in my mind. There was dozens and dozens of phone calls from neighbors. These are complete, people who have no attachment. Neighbors calling and saying this, people sleeping in cars, there's drug addicts coming and going, and you had not just one kid in there, you had 4 others or 3 others. So they would respond and say, oh, unfounded, nothing.
And I think one of the biggest things too is this system incentivizes biological parents to receive their children back by paying them money per child. That has got to change. I don't think you should be able to get a check unless you walk into the child welfare office with your child in hand, and that child is examined and looked at and made sure they're alive and well.
And follow-ups. Where's the follow-ups? Like, okay, so Oakley gets placed with her biological family. There's a fire. There's people like Jamie Jo and others probably that called up and said, hey, something's not right here. And nothing was done about it. And that's what's so painful about this. And I feel your pain just from seeing you and talking to you, because like you said in one of the interviews, if she was with us, she'd be alive. She'd be, and I'm not saying, that she's dead right now, but I'm saying that the chances of her being alive right now are slim to none. It's a very small thing. And I'm not going to sit here and look you in the eye and tell you that, we always hold on to hope. We pray. But Jamie Jo, we have to call it as we see it here. And the real situation is that if they listened just a little bit to you and to others, maybe we wouldn't be dealing with this.
Sure.
I want to play another piece. This is just a couple of minutes long, but this is going over the failures in DCYF in your case. So I want to load this, and of course, it's not loading. Okay, there we go. Whew, technical difficulties. But I think this is important because this is going to go over just a little bit about some of the failures here. Why isn't this not playing for me? Of course. Give me a second. All right, here we go. Why won't this let me play it? All right. Well, I'll work on that. Let's just get back to the conversation. I want to just ask you quickly. The principal who went over Jamie Jo over to the house, whether it was the play date after I believe it was after the fire, right? Or was it before?
It was after.
Yeah. So it was after. She, again, she had a bad feeling about something initially. It just didn't, they said that she was in a timeout in her room. And then there was a second play date with a friend's daughter and so she gets the story that Oakley is not living there anymore and that she went somewhere, or there was some kind of story that just didn't jive. She called the police, and that's what got the ball rolling. So you're standing on the rooftops and yelling from the loudspeakers was dismissed. But a school teacher, I mean, listen, I commend this woman. I give her the thumbs up. I say, she saw something, she said something, she pushed the issue. But it's going to take somebody who is in the teaching field, a school teacher. She's got no ties to Oakley, to get the ball rolling. And, again, it's got to be frustrating because you as her mother was screaming,
Right. And and especially like I'm a school teacher, right? Like, yes, I have ties to Oakley, but I'm a mandated reporter by the state also. And so when I called CPS in January of 2021, and I spoke with them and said, like, I am a mandated reporter and I'm concerned about this. It was almost questioned like, well, did you see the abuse? And I was like, well, no, like I didn't, but I'm hearing of this. And I don't care if it was the daughter that I fostered for almost 3 years or a student that I see every single day. If I hear that there's abuse, I'm going to call on it because
Right.
that's what you should do.
Absolutely.
So that was really frustrating. And then when I called again in November of 2021 and said, hey, there's this weird fire that's happened out of this, girl's house that I love and I want to make sure she's safe. Don't question that I didn't see it or that I'm not around it. It's something's not right. And that's terrifying. So yeah, being a teacher and a mandated reporter, like, I feel like that should hold some kind of like, okay, this is serious. Like if they're calling about it, I wasn't calling just because she was my foster daughter. I was calling because I care about her and her siblings.
Right. And exactly what you just said, it should hold some kind of water. Listen, if I, as a retired New York City police detective, or Jen as a retired FBI special agent, called in an anonymous call, you could bet your bottom dollar that someone's going to go out there and respond to it. But it shouldn't take that. That's one of the extra parts of the system that's broken, because we're in public service. It doesn't matter who makes the call. You need to respond to what's in front of you. And if someone is making an allegation that there is some type of something going on, and it involves a child or somebody who can't fend for themselves, disabled, senior citizen, somebody with, some type of learning disability, or someone who can't speak or can't see, you need to respond to it. Those are the most vulnerable people. Yeah. This piece is ready to play. I'm sorry about the technical deal. We'll blame Josh for that, the producer.
Blame Josh.
Josh. We always blame Josh, right, ladies? We're gonna blame Josh. All right, I'm going to play this piece because I think it's important. This is the DCYF failure overview.
To some of our most pressing questions, were there shortfalls or missteps from the state agency meant to protect Oakley while in foster care?
Fox 13 News reporter Jennifer Lee is live in the newsroom to explain what we know so far. Jen?
David and Jamie, we've reached out, but the Department of Children, Youth and Families has not provided answers to some of our basic questions about Carlson's care and placement these last few years. Tonight, we hear from an independent office that investigates complaints of abuse and neglect within the state child welfare system.
I'm just going to pause it just for a second because I got to put a disclaimer out here. We heard this independent auditor from New Hampshire as well in the Harmony Montgomery case. I think it's hogwash. I think that when you take somebody from within the state that's working for the state, they have bosses that are hobnobbing with the other bosses. And I think it's a bunch of, let me bleep it out because this is a family show. I think it's a bunch of bullshit. So the bottom line here is what we're about to hear is somebody tied into the state of Washington that's going to speak about some of the things that need to be corrected that, as we know, to this date have not been corrected.
Starting at 7 months old, we're learning Oakley Carlson was in the care of her foster family until right before she turned 3 in late 2019 when she was returned to her parents. The director of the Washington State Office of the Family and Children's OMBUDS says that's usually the goal.
The primary goal is reunification and making sure that the parents have the opportunity to engage in remedial services that would address whatever parental deficiency led the child to enter state care.
But now Carlson's parents are in police custody for investigation of manslaughter while the search continues for the missing 5-year-old. Patrick Dowds' office investigates complaints of abuse and neglect regarding children and families involved in the state child welfare system. He can't specifically comment on this case, but says it can be a tricky balance within the state system to protect these children.
The harm from leaving the child in a possibly kind of neglectful or abusive situation in the home, in the family's home, versus the trauma of removing the child and the separation from the parent and possibly siblings.
Dowd says usually Child Protective Services conducts an investigation before a child is removed from a parent's care.
And if it reaches a point where the CPS worker believes that the child is at imminent risk of harm and has been abused or neglected, then the worker would have to go to court and present that information to a judge.
He says it's not uncommon for a child to be in foster care for a period of 1 or 2 years, like young Oakley was. But there are federal and state laws that require the court to look at the length of time a child is in out-of-home care.
And at a certain point, the court has to either order the department to seek a alternative permanent plan, which could include termination of parental rights and adoption, or make a finding that there's good cause to continue reunification efforts and not to pursue an alternative plan.
While hope remains alive for Oakley's safe return, Dowds says in the case of a child fatality due to abuse or neglect with a family that has prior history with the child welfare system, those cases go under executive review, which his office takes part in.
Well, our office was established in large part to respond to concerns about child safety.
The director of the Office of the Family and Children's Ombuds says law enforcement has the authority to take a child into protective custody if they see imminent risk of harm. Dowd says CPS workers, on the other hand, do not. He says they must go through checks and balances within the courts and convince a judge.
So that really didn't tell us much. That just covered the overview of what they're given their perspective from and what their guidelines are. And those guidelines are not something that can be followed right to the T. They have to be on a case-by-case basis. And in this situation, it was clear and evident that she should have not been put back with those parents. What's your thought?
Sorry. I that piece, and this is the first time I've seen that piece, I was going to have you bleep me out.
Yeah.
It was so stoic.
Yep.
And I felt like I was listening to somebody read an encyclopedia rather than somebody who is really putting the child's welfare at the forefront. Instead, they're putting policies and procedures and that are broken,
right.
And
that is the exact reason I played that, is I did want to show how these people have tunnel vision. We watched governors of the state of New Hampshire and Massachusetts go like this and point the fingers at each other. This is the same thing right here. This is a guy who's employed by the state, and he's saying that there comes a time and point where we have to make a decision. Well, how do you make the decision? Is it made just by, okay, we'll put them back. Let's put them back with the family. They've completed all the drug treatment programs. And we don't have to even check on them at all.
Yeah.
So,
it was hard to listen to for me.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I needed the audience to see that and hear how much failure, because we could say this till we're blue in the face, but when you have reporters on record playing that, it just, to me, is just a travesty of justice. Jamie Jo, I apologize for playing that, but I wanted people to hear the buffoonery that's going on here, and who pays the price for this? Our children.
I mean, yeah, and with Patrick Dowd, we did file with the Washington State Ombuds for Department of Children, Youth, and Families, because we believe that this is a case that absolutely has to be investigated. And I've been in contact with him once, and I'm hoping that they'll really look into it, and I hope that the government will look into it, because there's not going to be change unless they look into this department, because they have to structure everything. This is not right.
Yeah.
Well, just the comment that he made when he said something like, well, if there's just a little neglect or a little abuse, we have to really weigh that with the fact that they're biological, was the message. Right. It's just wrong on every level. And I hope that, social media exposure, Jamie Jo, I love that you're trying to get this message out there, because that's the only thing that's going to result in change, so that we don't have another Oakley Carlson.
Yeah.
I agree. Jamie Jo, do you have anything else that you might want to that maybe I missed here? Because again, I don't have all the specifics on the case, but these two monsters that are behind bars, they truly are evil people in my eyes, based on what they are standing accused of with their other child. I'm not even going to go into it or mention it. Those of you who want to look at this case, you can go and look at it. It's despicable. It's evil. It's demonic. Again, you had 2.5 years with Oakley, and I see all those photos that they were showing in the news. I bet you and your husband snapped those photos. So you're a strong woman to be able to sit here and watch this. And I know that you advocate. I have video of you outside the jail with a bullhorn up to your mouth. I mean, I was ready to play that, but I people can go and watch that. And that's an awesome piece for you, advocating for your child. And, that was just a little while ago, right? Wasn't that in February or something?
Yeah, we've done 4 jail gatherings, and we have another one planned coming up in April before the mom's trial.
Let me see if
We'll
I
continue
let me see
following
if I can find
developments
that,
in this case
because
and bring you updates.
I enjoyed that. I watched that like 3 times. Let's see, where is it? Okay. So again, we could talk about this until the sun comes up. There's just so many different aspects of this failing system. People just have to realize that it's not going to change unless something is done about it. You got to write, and I see people in the chat, and I thank you guys for in the chat, saying write to your local politicians, write, but we need to demand more. Writing letters, they could read them and put them in the garbage. I really feel strongly that we need to demand change and get in their face and have these rallies and these protests peaceful, where you can say, hey, listen, I'm sick of you failing our children. And when children go on the wayside, and we don't know what happened to Oakley, we don't even have her recovered. We don't know where she is. This is the crazy part, is that they're not even addressing the failures. I didn't see any review or anything like that. Was there any review that they did up in New Hampshire for this Harmony Montgomery case? No.
Something that I'm seeing a lot in the chat too, is people are asking if Oakley had a guardian ad litem or a CASA, which a CASA is a court-appointed special advocate. That would basically, be the voice of Oakley in court. And she did have a CASA, but unfortunately, in the 2.5 years that we had Oakley, he met her one time, took the time to come to our house and see her.
Crazy.
Yeah.
It just doesn't make sense. It just doesn't make sense.
But I think you're
right,
Ron. Oh, I'm sorry about getting a politician involved. Somebody to really grab hold of this, like what happened. And again, I have to refer to Harmony just because it happened in her case, where you had a political figure step up and advocate and push and demand change. And that's what needs to happen in this case. And hopefully, this media coverage will help have that come along. But the Twitter community is always asking, what can I do? What can I do? That's what they can do, is write their politicians, email, demand change in this system.
Yeah. I mean, the more we speak about it, the more that, people show outrage and, continue to talk about it on your social media platforms. But again, when it comes time for these folks to get reelected, and political people, they're out there campaigning, people should be in their face and talking about, what are you going to do about restructuring and, making the system so it's safe. So there are safeguards and people are accountable. There's no accountability. We talk about the police reform in the wake of George Floyd and all of this reform that we've done in policing, where we make officers and folks who are out there on patrol body cameras on all police departments. My own little small town police department here just recently got the body cams. There's literally no crime in my neighborhood. There's nothing, but they have it and it holds them accountable. And that's the good part. So it's protection for you and it's protection for the officers. It's the same concept here with the people who are taxed with going out and investigating and interviewing families. I'm sure that you've been interviewed many times in the beginning when you were going to foster and take in Oakley. I'm sure that they didn't just say, here, Jamie Jo, here you go, take this little 7-month-old child. There has to be accountability, and that's what I'm saying, is that these folks can just write off on a report, case closed or unfounded, and there's no accountability. So it's insane, and I'm going to scream from the rooftops as long as I can and as many times as I can. Tracy Coatsman is part of the Roar for AJ crew, and she has a story to tell. I had her on my channel to talk about, again, another humongous failure in the system in her neck of the woods. So thank you, Tracy, for being here and always supporting Crime Time with DutyRon. I want to say thank you to everybody that's been in the chat. Again, tonight we did get information that Naomi was recovered by the sheriff's office. It's on their Twitter page, I believe, Jen. It's Brian's been tweeting it out and talking about it. It's everybody's been asking in the chat. That's, again, we scheduled this live stream 2 days ago, and we went forward with it. When things break, I know I would love to just drop everything and start speaking about it. But out of respect for Jamie Jo and her case, this is what my obligation is, and this is what we're doing here tonight. So I will have a live on this tomorrow. We'll talk about it, myself and Ed Wallace, crime scene investigator. We'll get it right on us tomorrow. But as we're speaking now, this is about Oakley Carlson. And
we can't drop Oakley.
Yeah, we cannot. Absolutely. The ball has been dropped already with her many different times. But Jamie Jo, I want to, turn to you and give you maybe a final word here before we close up, and what you'd have to say to the audience and to people that are listening.
Yeah, thank you so much. So just to kind of wrap things up, we are in constant contact with the police, the sheriff's department, hoping for some news on Oakley, which we really don't know anything as of yet, but we have filed for an application with the EquiSearch, which I mentioned to Ron before we started, and I'm really hopeful to hear back on that. I think that would be something that would be really fantastic. For those that aren't familiar with Washington State, especially in our area, it is a very wooded, dense, thick forest area. So I think that would be something that might be utilized and helpful if we are to look for Oakley. And I think that just with people's help, and I really appreciate everybody that's tuning in, but just put pressure on people, write letters, share it on social media, make people uncomfortable, let them know that we know that this is a failure of Washington State and the Department of Children, Youth, and Families. And I think that by just sharing Oakley's name and constantly sharing out about her and letting people know that we haven't forgotten about her, that's the best thing that we can do for her right now.
Absolutely. And I want to say this. I said it to you before we went live. I will do whatever I can to make communication with the local authorities there. You can give them my number, or if you can give me a contact, I will call them first thing tomorrow. Sure. If there's any assistance by drone searching or by any kind of searching that EquiSearch can offer, as long as they give us the blessing, we will make it happen. I'll get on the phone with Dave Rader, who's the director. We'll get resources out there to try to find Oakley. Again, lost is not alone. I have the wristbands here. We search for the missing. That's what we do. So abso-freaking-lutely. I'm here for you 110%. You got my number. You got Jennifer's number. We'll do anything and everything that we can to give you a platform, and also to lend that search hand if it's possible. I wanted to say something too. For the folks that are in the chat sending, well wishes, it is always greatly appreciated. But if at any time something comes up where there are searches that are needed and you're in the area, definitely come out and volunteer. And if there are petitions to be signed, if Jamie at some time or another gets something together, I want us all to stand behind her and lock arms with her and her husband and sign these letters and send them off to wherever we need to send them off. Things happen in numbers. So when we stand together, we get things done. So good things happen when you have lots of people behind it and shouting from the rooftops. Jen, any final words before we wrap it up?
I think Jamie Jo just said it perfectly. Jamie Jo, you are the consummate mother. And thank you for keeping Oakley and her spirit alive. And Ron, thank you. Thank you so much for featuring this story.
It is my pleasure. Jamie, I again, anything that Crime Time with DutyRon, myself, EquiSearch, I'm good friends with Mark Class from the Class Kids Foundation, and he's on the West Coast. So I have his number, and I have his right-hand man, Brad, who's in charge of all of the searching. He's like a Navy SEAL. Brad's a great guy. All I got to do is send him a text. So if we get a fail on EquiSearch, maybe we can have Mark Class call over to the department, and maybe they'll, we'll hit them from all angles, is what I'm saying. So we'll do whatever we can for you.
Thank you.
I want to just say thank you to Jennifer for putting me onto this case, and Jamie Jo for so graciously coming on to speak about your daughter. Again, my heart breaks for you and your community, and all of the folks who are foster parents out there are doing good things and are doing the right thing. It takes a special kind of couple and person to be a foster parent. It's not an easy thing, and there are good ones out there. There are bad ones, and it's like this in every single function in humanity. So let's get behind them. And I want to just say again, as I like to wrap all these shows up, God bless the world. God bless the United States of America, and God bless each and every one of us here in the chat, but especially Oakley Carlson. She needs us now more than ever. Let's send prayers, strength, and positive vibes to her and to all who love her. Good night from New York and Washington. And Jen, I'm not sure where you are. I'm not going to say. Maybe you're in like a secret squirrel spot. You're down in Florida, right?
I'm in Florida right now.
Yeah. What's the temperature over there?
Warm. Every day, warm.
Ugh. All right, guys. Thank you so much for being here, and thank you to the replay viewers. We'll see you on the next one.